Evelyn had already written her goodbye letters. Then, just after midnight, a frightened little girl knocked on her door. That knock changed everything. The knocking began just after midnight. At first, I thought it was part of a dream. Then it came again, fast and frightened, 3 small fists against my front door. I was sitting at the kitchen table with 4 envelopes in front of me. One was for my lawyer. One was for the bank. One was for the people next door. The last envelope had no name because I no longer knew who would care enough to open it. I pushed the letters under a newspaper and went to the door. 7-year-old Emma stood outside in pink pajamas and 1 red boot. Her face was wet with tears. Behind her, the porch light next door was still on. "Mrs. Carter," she cried. "Mom is on the floor, and she won't answer me." For 1 second, I could not move. I had spent months planning how to leave the world quietly. Yet now a child was asking me to help keep someone else in it. I grabbed my coat and followed her across the frozen grass. Her mother, Maya, was lying beside the kitchen counter. The baby was crying in a high chair. Emma's little sister, Lucy, stood in the doorway holding a blanket to her mouth. I knelt beside Maya and called emergency services. Her skin was hot, and her breathing was weak. I spoke to her, although I did not know if she could hear me. "You are not leaving these children tonight," I said. "Do you understand me?" The ambulance arrived within minutes. The paramedics said Maya had a severe fever and was badly dehydrated. Her husband, Daniel, was working overnight in another town and could not return quickly. A police officer asked if the children had a relative nearby. Emma pointed at me. "She is our person," she said. I almost corrected her. I was not their person. 6 weeks earlier, I had not even known their names. But the baby reached toward me, Lucy began to cry, and the officer was waiting for an answer. "I can stay with them," I heard myself say. That was how the longest night of my life began. It was also the night my old life started to end. Before the family moved into the house next door, my days were as straight and empty as a road in winter. I woke at 6 every morning. I made 1 cup of tea and 2 pieces of toast. I washed the cup before the tea had finished cooling. At 8, I walked to the same grocery store. I bought milk, bread, and whatever fruit was on sale. I had enough money, but checking prices gave me something to think about. My husband, Samuel, had been dead for almost 3 years. People came often during the first month. They carried soup, flowers, and worried faces. They told me to call anytime, but most of them seemed relieved when I did not. Soon, the flowers died. The dishes were returned. The phone became quiet. I did not blame anyone. Grief makes other people uncomfortable. They want to help, but they also want you to become normal again. I never became normal. Samuel's brown coat still hung beside the door. His work boots remained under the bench in the garage. I had washed his favorite coffee cup, but I never put it back in the cabinet. I built rules around myself because rules did not die. Monday was laundry. Tuesday was windows. Wednesday was bills. Thursday was the garden, even when nothing grew there. The neighbors called me private. Some called me unfriendly. One young man called me the lonely woman next door, not knowing my kitchen window was open. I told myself I preferred being alone. The truth was harder. I had become afraid of needing anyone, because everything I loved could disappear. Then, on a grey morning in November, a moving truck stopped beside the empty house next to mine. I watched from behind my curtains. A tired-looking man carried boxes from the truck. A woman held a baby against her shoulder. 2 girls ran across the yard as if the cold air belonged to them. One of the girls stepped into my flower bed. I opened my window. "Please stay off the plants," I called. The little girl jumped back. Her father looked up and apologized. The plants were already dead for winter, but that was not the point. New people brought new noise, new cars, and new problems. I had seen it before. That evening, I heard furniture moving through the shared wall. Then I heard laughter. It was loud, careless laughter, the kind Samuel and I once had when we were young. I turned up the television. The next morning, the older girl waved while I swept my front walk. She had dark curls and 2 missing teeth. I looked away. She waved again. I gave her a short nod, hoping that would end it. Instead, she smiled as if I had given her a birthday gift. 3 days later, I saw her mother beside a car with a flat tire. The baby was crying in a stroller. The 2 girls were arguing about a bag of crackers. I watched for several minutes through the window. Samuel would have gone outside at once. He never passed a person who needed help. Sometimes his kindness annoyed me because it made every simple trip take longer. I could almost hear his voice. "Evelyn, watching is not helping." I put on my coat. The woman introduced herself as Maya. She said her husband had taken the tools to work by mistake. I told her to move the children away from the road and opened my garage. Samuel had taught me how to change a tire during our first year of marriage. My knees hurt, and the bolts were tight, but I still remembered every step. Maya thanked me so many times that I became uncomfortable. "It was only a tire," I said. But when I returned home, my hands were shaking. I had used Samuel's tools for the first time since his funeral. That night, someone pushed a folded paper under my door. It showed a gray-haired woman holding a large silver tool. A black cat sat beside her. Above the picture, someone had written, "To the strong lady next door." I smiled before I could stop myself. My cat, Olive, stared at me from the sofa. "It looks nothing like me," I told her. I placed it on the refrigerator anyway. After that, the family's names reached me one by one. The older girl was Emma. Her sister was Lucy. The baby was Noah. Daniel, their father, repaired medical equipment for clinics. Maya worked 3 days a week at a dental office. They had moved to our town because rent was lower and Daniel's new job paid better. I learned all this without asking. Maya talked whenever she saw me. At first, I answered with 1 or 2 words. Then one morning, she brought me banana bread. The next week, Emma left another drawing. This one showed 2 houses with a bridge between them. I told myself the children were simply being polite. I also began checking the window at 3:30, when their school bus arrived. That winter was colder than usual. Cold weather had always made me miss Samuel more. We used to sit close on the sofa and complain about the heating bill. After he died, I kept the house too cold because warmth felt wasteful for one person. By December, I had started writing goodbye letters. I did not write them all at once. I wrote 1 sentence on a bad night, then another sentence a week later. I told myself I was only preparing, but I knew the truth. I was tired of waking up with no reason to get out of bed. I did not have a clear date. I had no detailed plan. I only carried the dangerous idea that one quiet night, I might stop trying to stay. Then small things kept interrupting me. Emma knocked because her ball had landed in my yard. Lucy wanted to show me a snowman with 1 arm. Maya brought chicken soup when she learned I had a cold. Each interruption seemed unimportant. Together, they became a thin rope around my waist, keeping me from walking too far into the dark. On the night Maya collapsed, that rope pulled hard. After the ambulance left, I took the children into my house. Noah refused to sleep. Lucy wanted her mother. Emma tried to act brave, which was worse than crying. I made hot chocolate and burned the first pan. Samuel had always made it, and I had forgotten how much milk to use. The girls drank the second pan without complaint. Lucy noticed the photograph of Samuel on the shelf. "Is that your husband?" she asked. "Yes." "Where is he?" Children can ask the hardest question with the softest voice. "He died," I said. Lucy thought for a moment. "Do you still talk to him?" "Sometimes. My grandma talks to Grandpa," she said. "She says dead people can still hear love." I turned away because my eyes had filled with tears. At 2 a.m, Noah finally slept in a basket beside the sofa. Emma and Lucy lay under blankets on the floor. Olive sat near them like a guard. I returned to the kitchen and pulled the 4 envelopes from under the newspaper. Emma appeared in the doorway. "What are those?" she asked. "Old letters. Are they important?" I looked at her tired face and thought about what she had said to the officer. "She is our person." "Not tonight," I answered. I put the letters into the bottom drawer and turned the key. Maya came home the next afternoon. The hospital had given her fluids and medicine. Daniel returned before noon, pale and full of guilt because he had not been there. They both thanked me until I wanted to leave the room. "You would have done the same for anyone," I said. Maya shook her head. "No, Evelyn. Many people would have called for help. You stayed." Her words followed me home. That evening, my living room still held signs of the children. A pink sock lay under the chair. Crayon marks covered 3 pages on the table. A small handprint remained on the glass door. Normally, I would have cleaned everything at once. Instead, I sat in the middle of the mess and listened to the silence. It no longer felt peaceful. It felt like an empty room after music stops. The family began including me in small parts of their life. Maya asked me to drink coffee on her porch. Daniel repaired the loose handle on my kitchen cabinet. The girls came over to bake cookies and used enough flour to cover the floor. I complained, but I kept buying more flour. At dinner one Sunday, Noah dropped mashed potatoes onto my sweater. Everyone became quiet, waiting for me to be angry. I looked at the white mark on my chest and started laughing. The others laughed too. I laughed so hard that I had to wipe tears from my face. On the walk home, I felt guilty. How could I laugh when Samuel was gone? The question had lived inside me for years. It treated happiness like a betrayal. That night, I stood beside his photograph. "I laughed today," I whispered. "I hope you are not angry." In my memory, I heard his warm voice. "About time, Evelyn." Not every day became easy. Some mornings, grief returned before I opened my eyes. I reached toward Samuel's side of the bed and found cold sheets. Sometimes I cried while washing one cup in the sink. But the sadness had changed. It came like heavy rain, not endless winter. I knew it would pass, even when I could not see the sky. In early spring, a bright orange notice appeared on the old oak tree at the end of Cedar Lane. The city planned to remove it. A large branch had cracked during a storm and damaged a parked car. The notice said the tree might be unsafe. Residents had 10 days to send comments. That oak had stood there longer than any house on our street. Samuel and I had rested under it during our first walk through the neighborhood. Years later, he built a bench nearby so older people could sit in the shade. I read the notice 3 times. Then I went home and wrote a letter to the city office. My first letter was angry. I called the decision careless and foolish. Maya read it and gently asked whether I wanted people to listen or only to know I was angry. I almost took the paper back. Then I started again. I wrote about the tree's history. I asked for a tree expert to examine it. I suggested cutting the damaged branches instead of destroying the whole tree. Maya sent the letter to a local community website. By evening, people were sharing it. Not everyone agreed with me. A man named Mr. Collins knocked on my door the next day. The broken branch had fallen on his daughter's car. He said saving an old tree was not worth risking a child's life. His anger was understandable, but his words hurt. "You care more about your memories than our safety," he said. After he left, I wondered if he was right. Samuel had loved that oak. But love could not make a dangerous tree safe. For 2 days, I said nothing more. Then Emma came home with a school book about trees. She showed me how experts could test the trunk and roots. "Maybe the tree is sick," she said. "But maybe it only needs help." That simple sentence gave me a better idea. At the city meeting, I asked for an independent inspection. I also asked the neighbors to accept the result, even if it meant losing the tree. My hands shook when I stood before the room. I had not spoken in public since Samuel's funeral. "I do not want memory to be more important than safety," I said. "But fear should not make every decision for us. First, we should learn the truth." The room became quiet. Mr. Collins looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. The inspection found that the oak was healthy. One large branch needed removal, and a support cable was recommended. The city agreed to save the tree. For the first time in years, my name appeared in the local newspaper. The article called me a retired bookkeeper who had brought the street together. Emma cut it out and placed it beside her drawing on my refrigerator. "You are famous," she said. "I am certainly not. You are famous on our street." That, I admitted, might be true. The fight for the tree changed how people saw me. More importantly, it changed how I saw myself. Neighbors began stopping to talk. They told me stories about Cedar Lane before I moved there. I discovered that Mr. Collins grew tomatoes and had lost his wife 5 years earlier. One afternoon, he brought me a small plant. "For your garden," he said. "And I am sorry I spoke harshly." "I am sorry about the car," I answered. We stood there awkwardly, two lonely people trying to be less alone. By June, my garden had color again. Maya helped me choose flowers. Daniel repaired Samuel's old wooden table. The girls painted small stones and placed them around the roses. I started eating breakfast outside. Sometimes, I spoke to Samuel while the morning light moved across the yard. I told him about the girls, the tree, and the people who now waved when they passed. I still missed him every day. I had simply stopped using that love as a reason to disappear. In July, the family went away for a week to visit Daniel's parents. They asked me to water the plants and feed their fish. The street felt strangely quiet without them. On the second evening, I found a thin orange cat hiding under their porch. One ear was torn, and its fur was dirty. I carried it home in a towel and gave it water. Olive watched from across the room with great disappointment. The new cat stayed. Emma named him Sunny because he slept in every patch of light. I told her I had not agreed to keep him. She made him a collar tag with my phone number. It was difficult to argue after that. The happiest days often arrive without announcing themselves. That summer, my house filled with small shoes, empty juice cups, cat hair, and voices. I began writing one good thing at the end of each day. Some days, I wrote only, "The tea was warm." Other days, I filled half a page. Then, in late August, smoke rose above the park. I was cutting flowers when I heard sirens. By the time I reached the end of the street, flames were moving up the old oak. Several teenagers had been sitting near the bench. One of them had dropped a burning paper into dry grass. They tried to stop the fire, but wind carried it toward the tree. Firefighters pushed us back. The whole neighborhood watched in silence. Water struck the black branches, and pieces of burning bark fell to the ground. Emma took my hand. "Will it live?" she asked. I wanted to promise her it would. I had made that promise to myself only months earlier. But the fire chief looked at the trunk and slowly shook his head. The tree had to come down the next morning. I stayed in my house while the machines worked. Each loud crack felt like something breaking inside my chest. When the sound stopped, I closed every curtain. Maya knocked, but I pretended not to hear. The girls left a picture at the door. I did not pick it up. The loss was not only about a tree. It reminded me that saving something once did not mean you could keep it forever. It reminded me of the hospital room where Samuel had taken his last breath. It reminded me that love did not protect anyone from endings. That night, I opened the locked drawer. The goodbye letters were still there. I placed them on the kitchen table, exactly where they had been on the night Emma knocked. For a long time, I stared at my own handwriting. A sound came from the front porch. I expected another knock, but none came. When I opened the door, Emma was sitting on the step. She held the picture she had left earlier. "I knew you were home," she said. "I wanted to be alone." "I know." She did not come inside. She simply moved over and made space beside her. I sat down. The picture showed a small young tree. Around it stood many people holding hands. I recognized Maya, Daniel, Lucy, Noah, Mr. Collins, and several neighbors. A gray-haired woman stood in the center. "That is you," Emma said. "The old tree is gone, but the people are still here." I covered my face and cried. Emma rested her head against my arm. She did not tell me to stop. She did not say everything would be fine. She only stayed. The next morning, I took a piece of burned wood from the park. My hands became black with ash, but I carried it home. Daniel later cleaned it and made a small frame. Inside, I placed Emma's picture of the people around the new tree. The neighborhood decided to plant another oak. Mr. Collins asked the city for a safer place away from the road. Maya collected money for a new bench. The teenagers who had caused the fire joined the work under adult supervision. At first, I did not want them there. Then I saw one boy standing apart from the others. His face was pale, and he could not look at the burned ground. "I am sorry," he said when I passed him. I wanted to tell him sorry was not enough. Part of me wanted him to carry the shame forever. But I had spent years carrying pain as if it were a duty. I knew how heavy it became. "You cannot change what happened," I said. "But you can decide what you do next." He helped dig the deepest part of the hole. The girls called the young oak Samuel's tree. I asked them not to, because Samuel had never owned the old one. Emma looked confused. "Then we can call it tomorrow's tree," she said. Everyone agreed. After the planting, the local librarian asked if I would help with a children's reading hour. She had heard me speak at the city meeting and thought I had a calm voice. I almost refused. Then Lucy said, "You do all the voices when you read to us." So, every Wednesday afternoon, I began reading stories at Millbrook Library. The children did not care that my hair was gray or that I sometimes lost my place. They sat on the rug and listened. They asked questions no adult would ask. One boy wanted to know whether sad endings were allowed to become happy later. I told him some endings were only the middle, although we could not see it yet. In October, Maya found the goodbye letters while helping me search for an insurance paper. I entered the room and saw the envelopes in her hands. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She did not open them. She read only the words I had written on the front. Her face changed. "Evelyn," she whispered. "Were these from before?" "Yes." "Before the night I got sick?" "Yes." She sat beside me on the bed. I expected fear, questions, or anger. Instead, she held my hand. "I am glad Emma knocked," she said. "So am I." I finally told her about the months after Samuel died. I told her how quiet thoughts had become dangerous because I never spoke them aloud. Maya asked me to speak with my doctor. She also gave me the number of a grief counselor she knew through the dental office. I wanted to say I did not need help anymore. But surviving one dark season did not mean another could never come. I made the appointment. Talking to the counselor did not erase my grief. It gave the grief a place to go. I learned that missing Samuel and wanting to live could exist in the same heart. I also learned that love from new people did not replace him. It simply made room beside the love I already carried. On the first cold day of December, I took the 4 letters from the drawer. I did not tear them up at once. I read each one slowly. The woman who wrote them sounded tired, frightened, and certain that she had become unnecessary. I wanted to be angry with her. Instead, I felt tenderness. She had not known that a little girl would knock on her door. She had not known about tomorrow's tree, the library, 2 cats, or flour across the kitchen floor. She had believed the future was empty because she could not see it. I placed the letters in the fireplace and watched the edges turn brown. The words disappeared first. Then the pages folded into light. I did not feel as if I were destroying part of myself. I felt as if I were letting that woman rest. On Christmas Eve, Maya's family invited me to dinner. The house smelled of cinnamon, roasted chicken, and warm bread. Noah walked 3 steps toward me before falling onto the carpet. Everyone cheered as if he had crossed an ocean. After dinner, the girls gave me a handmade card. On the front, they had drawn 2 houses with a bridge between them. Inside, the words said, "To Grandma Evelyn, our person." I could not speak for several seconds. Daniel looked worried. "Is Grandma all right?" I laughed through my tears. "Yes," I said. "Grandma is all right." Near midnight, I walked home through light snow. My house stood quiet beneath the street lamp. Once, that silence had felt like proof that my life was over. Now it felt different. There were cookies cooling in my kitchen. 2 cats waited behind the door. A pile of library books sat on the table for Wednesday's children. Across the street, tomorrow's tree was only a thin shape in the snow. It looked too small to survive the winter. But its roots were already growing under the frozen ground. I stood beside Samuel's photograph and placed the Christmas card near it. "You would like them," I said. Then I corrected myself. "You do like them. I know you do." The next morning, Emma and Lucy knocked before 8. They wanted me to see the tiny lights Daniel had placed around the young oak. I opened the door before they could knock again. "Grandma Evelyn," Lucy called. "Come quickly." I reached for my coat. For many years, I had believed home was the place where Samuel and I had lived together. After he died, the house became a container for everything I had lost. I understand it differently now. Home is not only the person who stays forever. Sometimes it is the child who knocks at midnight. Sometimes it is the neighbor who sits beside you without speaking. Sometimes it is a young tree in winter, asking you to believe in a spring you cannot yet see. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. The girls ran ahead, leaving 2 bright lines of footprints in the snow. I followed them toward the lights, toward the voices, and toward another morning that I was grateful to meet.